Hey guys, how long has it been? Like 6, 7 months, half a year? I don't keep track of time, so my apologies. I bought a product that I've owned for a couple of months now, and I figured I finally talk about, put my thoughts to some paper, and tell you people about my experience with this piece of tech. This piece of tech in question is the Kanye West Yeezy Tech X Kano stem player. The $200 piece of clay that Kanye wants you to buy to listen to his new album Donda 2. I guess I'm in Kanye fashion, all black like the niggas that he's posted up with, the baby, Marilyn Manson. Just a bunch of just a bunch of great people, really. Didn't that Maryland guy, break his rib to suck his own dick? Just what a wonderful character. October 2019, during the press run for Ye's album Jesus is King, he met up with radio host Big Boy to talk about being born again, the album, and being canceled for being a former Trump supporter. But after all that, Ye shows off this very small, very square audio player that is splitting up instruments, vocals, and drums off of a track that's off of Jesus is King, and people were blown away by it. I mean, I'm not even gonna front, I was too. So that clip comes out, and Ye has a company called Yeezy Tech and makes this device come into fruition with Alex Klein, CEO of Kano Computing, a company who specializes in making coding kits and, fun little gadgets for children to play around with, like buildable headphones or a modular PC. And then in August 2021, amidst the very long release of his forthcoming album Donda, Ye releases the stem player along with the album. And the player looks way different compared to what we initially saw back in 2019. I mean, instead of it being a square tactile device, it's like a soft circle now. It's like, it's like a flesh of man that can also scream. It comes with a double-ended USB-C cable because they assume that every person that bought this player was a MacBook user, and it comes included with a foam holder for both the cable and the player. I stained mine though, so the resale value of that's going way the fuck down. And this media player has the ability to split up songs into 4 stems, usually pertaining to drums, vocals, bass, and instruments. To demonstrate this type of technology, it comes shipped with Donda, so if people want to get a strong impression of what this player can do, they already have a whole album to fuck with. And for what it shows off, it's pretty cool. It can even speed it up, add effects, reverse the music, it's transformative music. Specifications: well, the player is about 2.5 inches in diameter with Bluetooth, the aforementioned soft skin material, haptics, 4 touch sensitive light sliders that are color changing, a less than 1 inch speaker unit, a headphone jack, a Type-C USB port, and only 8 gigabytes of storage like we're in 2009. And it does the stem isolation with the addition of adding effects, adjusting song speed, recording your own stuff, playing those older recordings off of the player, overlapping different recordings to make a new mix. It has a lot of interesting features. I'm not even gonna hold you. It's really fucking hot in this outfit. I think I'm gonna have to change. It's really fucking hot. I'm all for the aesthetic, but it was pretty fucking hot. A fucking coat, and then you gotta put a fucking weirdo fucking thing on your face, and I just don't think it's entirely practical, if I'm being real with you. So how to access all this stuff? So you take your USB-C cord or some other alternative that has USB A to C, you plug it into your computer, and going through Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, you now have access to upload audio, readjust the player's overall settings, and play songs through the website stemplayer.com. Different methods of recording music onto the player are uploading any compatible audio video file, uploading up to 4 tracks all at once that actually have separate stems, or just any link that has an audio file attached to it, like a YouTube link or a SoundCloud link. It's actually pretty impressive. And the uploading process has changed from just directly sending it to the player to then watch it and wait for the results on the player, to now showing off the separate stems as it's uploading to the player. So you can now see the results without having to wait for the upload, which is a way better thing to do. Okay, so after doing all of that, you now have your selected tracks that are ready to listen to. And how's the listening experience? Well, have you ever listened to a Nintendo DSi speaker? Like with like the Nintendo DSi MP3 player? It's kind of like that. The speaker unit on this player is insanely small and does not drive out the type of sound this player should be driving out. Like, with such an emphasis on isolating different instruments and songs, like the player doesn't really have a distinct showing on what those instruments do sound like. Like, unless the bass has some low mid in it, it can play bass, it can do lower frequencies, but overall, you don't really hear it. So in regards of that, I just recommend that you just plug in some headphones, plug it up into a speaker, or even just Bluetooth some other speaker up to it, because, you know, by itself, it doesn't really sound that good. And as for splitting, in regards of different methods, it's kind of hit or miss. I mean, for my recommendation, I'd recommend for you to have the 4 different stems on deck. You know, it's going to be clean. It's going to be a nice little clean experience. You're actually going to be able to hear those 4 different stems at work. And even works better if you just have instrumentals where you could just split up different, you know, instruments that you have in your instrumental. But, you know, most people don't have stems. So what happens with the people who don't have stems, who just import audio files or just YouTube links into the stem player? Well, varied results is going to be the common theme in regards of importing stuff to this player. For example, I uploaded a song of mine twice, one of which was just one MP3 file, another was a pile of WAV files, all to be stems for one another, and the differences are practically night and day. If given the one audio file, the AI will try its best to detect the 4 stems of the songs, usually by going through dynamics and frequencies of said song. So usually it'll go for low mids just to detect the bass, it'll go for lows and mids just to detect the drums, it'll go for the mids and highs to get the instruments, and then usually it'll think of the highs as the vocals. And so when we're applying that to any song, it might sound great for others, but for other times it's stuff like Lean For Real, where it's the verse and the instrument are still together. It's a really good song too. I was kind of disappointed. So yeah, pretty much what the stem player is doing is just the AI ducking out certain frequencies and then isolating those to be alone. And like I said, it's extremely varied. One thing I noticed is that even though it's really great with the drums, I very much noticed that when it's going for a snare or a hi-hat, there's some reverse added to it, because of course the hi-hat and the snare are located in the mids and highs, and of course the instrument are possibly also in the mids and highs. So we're just getting this sort of weird reverse effect while also the drums are being isolated. It's cool, but you start putting your teeth into it, you kind of notice that, you know, it's a bit lacking in regards of the actual isolation when you're comparing it like 1-to-1 next to stuff like, you know, your split up stems and then donda, and then, you know, stuff that you ran through like a YouTube link or a SoundCloud link. You're definitely going to notice all those differences when you're playing it back to back. But don't get me wrong, I mean, the isolation is still pretty good. Like, I mean, it does a really good job at isolating vocals, even though I still hear the hi-hats and the clap when it comes to certain vocals. It still does a good job. It knows what it's trying to isolate. And I think it does extremely well with, you know, live instruments. I think this AI was suited around, you know, isolating live instruments. Whenever live instruments are just being isolated, like drums or like a real piano or some stupid ass shit like a glockenspiel, you know, it really does a good job at isolating those instruments, because I think the AI just knows that, hey, this is a piano, these are drums, these are real drums, and this is the fucking glockenspiel. But enough about the stem isolation. This can do other stuff to my music, like the fucking looping abilities or the time effects and ability to record and overlap other stuff. How does that work? Well, all of it's actually pretty decent. I very much love the time effects. For some reason, you know, the stem player just does a really good job at cleanly reversing and speeding up songs that I run through it. It never gets old, and it never sounds fucked up. Like, so yeah, this player includes looping abilities, time effects, and an ability to record. So this player doubles as a cool MP3 player and, you know, a sampler for audio production. And I think that whole audio production part is where this product should actually really shine. Because of the plug and play and simple nature of this very complicated process that is very much working under the hood. I mean, the fact that you can press a button and it's ready to turn on, and you can press any other button and it's ready to just do all these really weird effects like feedback, echo, and gate, you know. It's really impressive. And so I think the fact that you can also plug this into a mixer or plug it in as a MIDI, so then you can record it, it really is it's a really good tool for audio production. You can sample vocals, drum breaks, instruments. You can now, it opens a whole new door for sampling and makes the whole complication for sampling a bit more easier. Although a $200 easier, I guess. I don't fucking know. You run the track through the AI, it determines the BPM so it could let you know what it is, or maybe you could readjust it so it could do the looping and gate effect properly without it being off tempo. And yeah, like I said earlier, sure, when it isolates vocals, it's kind of underwhelming, but it still works as a foundation, so you can at least tune it better when you're in a DAW. And so I actually tested it. I recorded vocals off the stem player and then I flipped it.
Really, yeah. Feel like the best of my city. That when you talking about pity. I got that bit from the bitch. All of my G's say they with me. Got all my say ain't with me. That when you talking like me. I put the foot in the pity.
This player can be intuitive if you have an idea of what to do with it if you had it in your hand. I mean, the ability to record the player on its own and then play back other recordings off the own player and then overlap other recordings to make a whole different mix, it's like your own version of Fuser. Plugging it into a mixer takes that to the next step, using it as a sampler as a foundation for a very complicated process of isolating instruments. It's intuitive. However, using it as only a consumer or a person who doesn't really have an interest in audio production or making music, it's a $200 toy. A varied $200 toy at that. Running links and audio files that aren't inherently stems, yeah, sure, it'll pump out results, but not, results that'll be great all of the time. It's very often that other instruments end up leaking onto other tracks, just kind of making the whole experience a bit disappointing. I mean, when you're trying to hone in on that one instrument and you're just fucking hearing that stupid ass hi-hat, or when you're just trying to listen to some vocals or you're hearing that snare in the background, it kind of ruins the whole experience of this thing doing a stem isolation on the fly. I mean, yeah, like I said, if the track were piano and string, these live drums that you can tell that are live drums, and these super high pitched vocals that obviously are just not in the same frequencies as the drums, the stem player is gonna for sure isolate that. But if we're just talking like a trap beat that's kind of like, it's kind of all meshed together for like a reason or something, the stem player is definitely going to have a hard time isolating that if it's just a link or an audio file. And yes, the results are impressive. Like, it still does the stem isolation pretty fine. But like I said, the back to back of doing actual stems, playing donda content, and then playing the actual shit, it's gonna be underwhelming, especially on top of the fact that, yeah, Donda 2 and Jesus is King were music that was made for the stem player. I mean, you add these songs onto your player and they're just absolutely ready and they sound clean and crisp and they sound really impressive and cool. But when I do that to my own songs, or when I do that to just one audio file, it's very varied. I like the stem method way better, but not everyone has access to that stem method. Donda and Jesus is King might have been ways that, were ways to, demonstrate how the stem player works, or maybe it was another way to consume Kanye content. Possibly the latter. And it's cool having the ability to hone in on Kanye production, but what about the rest of his discography, dude? I mean, I'm talking stronger, flashing lights, fucking power, dark fantasy. Hey. On site. I mean, come on, man. Come on, bro. All of the lights. I would have loved to see all of these Kanye classics actually return back onto the stem player and be ready for the stem player, but kind of just get the newer stuff. And I don't mind Donda and Jesus is King, but I can tell you they're not my favorites. And even then, hearing the stem player content, which isn't a lot to be honest, like it might be, 3 albums, but 2 of them are, they don't really have a lot of drums. One of them is pretty much just a gospel album. And then Donda doesn't have any drums, so to take that how you will. And then Donda 2 is unfinished. We got all these tracks and yeah, they sound completely unfinished. So, will he ever update those? Possibly not. He hasn't talked about Donda 2 since the fucking album came out. So, here we are. Dropping $200 for a fucking Kanye player is so insane to me. And some people will actually do it, man. I go to the Yeezy stem player Reddit and they're talking about, man, it feels like I'm a part of a secret club. It feels like I'm part of a club buying this thing. And I'm like, man, did you really just drop $200 to listen to an album? I get the vinyl. I get a vinyl sometimes, you know. If you drop $1,000 on a fucking Frank Ocean vinyl, I'm gonna look the other way. But $200 for an unfinished Kanye album, you're kind of pushing it, man. And I'm not saying the price of the stem player isn't reasonable, but if you're just using it just to listen to music, I wouldn't say it's worth the purchase. There isn't enough content ready for it, and the listeners are probably just going to run a shit ton of their favorite songs through it, most likely via YouTube link or something, and might be indifferent on the vastly varying results. Like, people are going to see that difference, man. I'm going to be real with you. Do I believe the stem player is the future of music listening? No. The hardware is decent and the software is okay as of right now. It's not mind-blowing right now. It doesn't garner the feeling to instantly drop $200 on it, nor does it garner the feeling of next generation music listening. You know, it's decent, but it's not that good. The only person that is holding this player in high regard, saying that this is an evolved way to listen to music, is Alex Klein, you know, the person who designed the fucking player. So, you know, that says a lot. You know, will Kanye fully transition, you know, the future of his discography to the stem player? Probably not. He recently just celebrated the fact that Donda 2 isn't going to be making any charts because of it dropping exclusively on the stem player, and he thought that was a celebration. He goes on Drink Champs and he's like, you better not compete with me and Donda on the Grammys. So and now you're boasting about the fact that, you know, your album doesn't really qualify for the billboards because you dropped it on a clump of clay. You dropped your album on a clump of clay, and Billboard said we can't really count that, man. But yeah, to be honest, I would like to see if Kanye or Kano could bring in other artists and, you know, have their discography go on the stem player. You know, I think that would help the whole listener only aspect, because if other artists are throwing their, you know, songs into the ring for the stem player, that incentivizes other people to see, hey, I want to hear what this K Tronada song sounds like. I'm just saying some bullshit for real. Also, I would love this player to get an app on desktop and mobile. The fact that I have to access all my settings, and I have to do all the file transfers and see how all my songs sound and all my recordings sound, you know, via a web browser and an internet connection. That makes me upset. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't like the fact that I have to access those type of settings only through a fucking web browser, and on top of that, only 2 web browsers, Chrome or Edge. Like, how come I can't? Okay, so if I hook this up to a MacBook, I need to install Chrome, or I can't do it on Safari, or if I'm using Firefox only, I'm gonna have to resort to Edge, or I'm gonna have to install Chrome if I'm on Windows. You know, I don't like the fact that it's only on a website. And also, I think this would work way better if we also got that mobile app, because I can do that stuff on the go. You know, you give me this double-ended USB-C cable, knowing that we are in a time where Android devices and tablets, we're all transitioning to this USB-C bullshit, and the fact that I can't plug this up to my phone and do the settings off of my phone is kind of disappointing. Please make an app for the stem player. Overall, the player is an obscure item, right? You know, one hand, it's an MP3 player with a revolutionary feature, you know, that really does a lot of stuff behind the curtains, right? And then on another, the sampler / audio production tool that you may possibly use. But like I said, that might not pan out entirely if you're just a consumer, not a creator. The fact that there's a whole album just locked behind this player, I think it's strange, you know. You know what exactly is Donda 2? I don't know. Why did Kanye make the decision to make that album on the stem player only? I don't know. Do I think, you know, people should go out their way to buy the stem player to listen to that album? I've said it many times in this video, that album is unfinished. So no. That's what I really think about the stem player. I think it's decent, but I think the stuff that it's a Kanye item, so it's just everything that weighs behind it is kind of like a varied experience. This is absolutely not the future of music listening, and you shouldn't pay $200 for one album. Like I said, especially if it's unfinished. Okay, see you guys in September or something. I don't know. Like I said, I don't keep track of time, so you know, whenever I see you is whenever I see you. Bye.